Welcome everybody to Crypto Rosetta. My name is Savage. Today we're going to be having a look at Solana. This is going to be a lower time frame video. A higher time frame video is up above, so check that out if you haven't already. Let's get into the charts and see what's going on. Before we get into the lower degree counts, we're going to talk about the two different ways we're looking at this. Now, within this idea here, what we could be saying is that potentially we have a completed corrective move to the downside here, and we could be looking for a bigger impulse to the upside. Now, within this idea, we'd need to maintain this low, and we'd be looking for bullish price action. We're going to cover this bullish potential first, and then we're going to talk about that possibility of the more bearish case where we could still see price looking to come back down and actually take this low. Now, within this idea here, we need to be very careful until we start breaking and finding support above this 786 here at this 125.66. Any kind of a three-wave move up into this zone could actually just face us with rejection, and we could look to continue down. Now, within this idea of a bullish move to the upside off of these lows, there's a couple of ways I'm currently still looking at it. Now, one of the ways that we've been talking about this for a while now is since we actually came back down into this green target box was that we could be looking for this to be potentially a bigger A, B, and a C pattern. Now, we also did say, we need to be very careful because we did move up past this 0.618 here, so the C wave could technically look to complete here. Alternatively, we could be looking for a trending move. Now, if we're looking for a trending move, what we are looking for is this 1618 here at this 91.24. And the key idea here would be that if this is taking place, we'd be looking at this as 1-2, and then effectively looking at this potentially as another 1-2, or that we're still forming this additional wave 1 here where we could be forming a diagonal. Now, if we are looking at this case, until we actually break above this 91.24, we need to just be very careful, like I said, of that potential rejection area where we could look for continuation down. If we do see a bigger push up towards this zone, what I would then be anticipating is that this would become 1, 2, 3, and then we'd be getting a fourth wave and then looking for this fifth wave, which could look to push us up towards the zone of this 183 to this 137. Obviously, there's a long way to go here, so we need to keep an eye on these internals for more local invalidations, but we're going to go over this in a second. Now, the other way that we could see this play out is that we could actually be forming something like a diagonal pattern here. Now, there's two ways we can look at this. We can either argue this is wave 1, this is wave 2, this is wave 3, 4, and we're looking for a 5-wave move for this wave 5. Or alternatively, what we could argue is that this is 1, 2, and then we're going to see a zigzag here for a 3, zigzag down for a 4, and a zigzag up for a 5. Now, if we do see something like this play out, at the moment, I'm looking at this structure and just thinking that, if this is a 5-wave move, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's potentially going to fall short of this diagonal line that we've got here between this wave 1 and this wave 3. So it's possible that we can get a truncation in this fifth, and then we could see a 3-wave move down like that, and then see a move to the upside. But what I would think is more likely then is that potentially I'm looking at this slightly different then, that this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to have to monitor this. Either way, we wouldn't be expecting a break back down below this point here of this 1735, and we'd be looking for at least a 5-wave structure up, 3 waves down, and then either 3, 4, 5, something like this, or like I said, A, B, and C, looking for a push to the upside. So that's what we're looking for on that shorter term move there. When we see something like this, what we'd want to see, if this is actually going to be looking to have a continuation up, is that this would become wave 1. We'd look for 3 waves down for this wave 2, and then this would be our critical zone to hold here. These two bullish counts are valid for as long as we hold this 796, but if we start to break down more impulsively and we lose this low and we start to take out the 786 level, this is going to be a key level in my opinion. If we lose this 1105, then the probability becomes higher that we're going to see this low get taken. So we want to stay above that zone. We can wick through it, but what we'd want to see is, price looking to quickly regain that level and then find support above that area. Now, within the idea of this looking to extend out, where what we'd be saying is that this is potentially 1, 2 and another 1, 2 here, what we'd need to see for confirmation would be a move up towards a 76.88. Now, this would then be saying that this move here is 1, 2, and then we're looking for this as a third wave. Now, I've also got this C wave target here marked out just as a potential zone we could be looking for if this is becoming a bigger corrective move, something like this. I'm going to be keeping an eye on this 1-to-1 level as well. This is an interesting zone that we could look to potentially get some reactions off of if we do look to push up in this way. Though ideally what we're looking for this bullish count is this 1618 of the 76.88. Now, within this idea, we'd be saying that this is 1, 2. We want to see this 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to now focus in on this local. So another way we could look at this, however, is that potentially we could still be looking at something like this, where we could argue that this move here is in 3 waves. We look at this as our wave 2, and then we're looking for another 3-wave move to the upside in this wave 3. Now, within this idea, once again, it would be that we need to see a zigzag play out to the upside here. We would be looking for this higher trend line once again. Now, within this idea, it would be slightly different to the potential that this is a diagonal from further back. So we'd have to be careful, because if we do see a 5-wave move up to these highs, we need to just bear in mind that idea that this could then become 1, 2, and then we look for that push up. So it's going to be key to see how we react if we do start to get these higher price movements. If we are looking at the structure, if we start to break significantly above these trend lines, then the diagonal idea starts to fall apart. But if we do remain contained within these, we're going to need to keep an eye on this. Now, within this, like I said, we'd be looking for 3 waves up, and what we'd be looking for is an interaction with this trend line. Now, directly above us, this is sitting towards 39.56, and what I'd be expecting is for this to take place in 2 moves. So we're going to go into these lower degree counts in a second, but what we'd be saying is that effectively we want to see 3 waves up for this wave 3, 3 waves down for the wave 4, and then 3 waves up for the wave 5. Once we have this wave 4 in place, we can potentially then look to draw this lower trend line here, but until we actually do, all I can do is base it off of these 2 points here. Now, moving in here and having a look at this more simple idea here, where we could be looking at a breakout. The initial way that I'm looking at this is that potentially this could actually become 1, 2. We have hit this 1.618, which is sitting at this 24.65, and because of that reason, I'm looking out for this potential of a 4th wave. Now, we have had 3 waves to the downside here, and we have come into the typical zone, but we could potentially still see price form something like this as a bigger corrective move, where we could still look to push down and test some of these lower levels towards this 22.27 and this 21.55. If we move past 20.56, this would invalidate the idea of this being a 5th wave potential to the upside here, and the deeper that we move down here, the higher this 5th wave target becomes. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this structure to the downside. At the moment, I would say that if this is the case, I don't think that this corrective move is over. I would be expecting to see price looking to push back up here before one more push to the downside, looking to test these lower levels. Now, if we do get a test of these lower levels, what I'll then be looking for is the potential for this 5th wave to play out. It is also possible we could start to form this 5th wave from this point. It would just be very small in comparison to this wave 2, but if this is the case, you know, it could be just the fact that we have a more simple wave 4 and this wave 2 was a bit more complex and had a bit more sideways. So it is still possible that it could develop in a small wave 4 like this, but the probability becomes that we're going to be looking for something of similar time duration to this wave 2. So this is why I'm not ruling out the idea that we could still see a push down here into this target box before that push to the upside. Now, we also need to be aware of the more bullish case here, because we are looking potentially for a wave 3 in that higher time frame idea, that we could see something more along these lines where this move actually becomes 1, 2, and then we have another 1 and a 2 here. The same idea would apply here, except what we'd be looking for is that this move technically could look to move down deeper than this wave 1 high at this 20.56. If we do see price looking to push back down into this white target box area in a bigger 3-wave move, what I would then be looking for would be the potential of this wave 3 up. Now, common support zones here is typically between this 50% and the 786, but I have also included these higher 2 numbers here of the 0.236 and the 0.382, because sometimes when we get a wave 3, we can see a shallower retracement. Now, if we do continue to hold this level and we start to rally to the upside here, we can potentially look for this wave 2 to have actually completed over here, because this wave 3 would be expecting to have a smaller wave 2 than the previous structure. The problem is we would have to move up towards 35.89 to have a confirmation of this move. Until we did, we'd have to still be on the lookout for that possibility of a deeper move to the downside here. This 20.85 is looking like quite an interesting zone. If we do continue to push down here, we'll be watching that level. If we do move down towards the 0.618 at this 20.85, this would then mean that our 1.618 is up here at this 32.76. So In this case, what we'd be looking for is this would be our wave 1. We'd want 3 waves down. Then we would want to see a nice strong 5-wave move to the upside, looking for these higher targets. If we do see something like this, this could then mean that this as a wave 1 to this wave 3 could be looking for these targets over here, which would be the 2.618 and the 3.618 of this wave 1 down here. So if we do continue to push up, we can see that this 3.618 here would align quite nicely with this white target box. So this is what I'm just keeping an eye on. If we continue to hold 1873, we could look for this more bullish case to actually play out to the upside. Now, alternatively, within this more simple 5-wave idea here, what we'd be looking for is this 5-wave structure to complete, and then we'd be looking for a retracement to the downside. If we do move down towards this 50% to the 786 level again after completing this 5th wave to the upside, this could then align into that idea that this becomes A, B, and C, or alternatively this becomes another 1, 2, and then we're going to be looking for a bigger push to the upside like we've just talked about, looking for that bigger wave 3. So this is what I'm looking out for within these bullish ideas here. If we do continue to hold these key levels, we can look for that possibility of that continuation to the upside. Now, if we go over the more bearish idea here of what we could be looking for if this move is not completed to the downside, this is the next best interpretation that I have here, is that we could have this as our X wave here, and actually we have this as a bigger ABC pattern. 1 to 1 is sitting at this 606, 1 to 1 of the Y wave is sitting at this 478. So those could be potentially interesting areas to keep an eye on if we look to break down. Now, within this idea, what we'd be saying is that this is just a corrective move to the upside here, and we could be looking for this continuation down. Now, within this idea, I wouldn't like to see this X wave get broken here at this 48.34. And what we'd be expecting is to see a 5-wave move to the downside here, looking for the C wave. Now, the problem is this move down is currently not looking very impulsive. So either this is meaning that we could potentially be looking for this B wave still being incomplete, in which case, you know, we can't rule out the idea that we could have something like this as an A, B, C, D, E triangle, and then we look to continue down. If this is the case, you know, invalidation is going to be this high here and effectively this low over here, which is sitting towards this 1781 and this area of this 3283. So that would be our invalidation if we're looking at something like a triangle playing out. But if this is actually looking to break down from where it currently is, what I would be looking for is the C wave to actually look to play out. Now, coming in here more locally, previously what we were discussing was a couple of potentials here. We were saying that what we could see here is that potentially this could be a diagonal where this becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but we actually pushed up too high and invalidated this by taking that wave too high. So I'm going to get rid of that from the chart now. Now, this idea here is still technically possible, but the problem I don't like with this potential here is that this is a wave 2 would be very large in comparison to this previous wave 2. So the probability is already less within this idea that we could be looking at this move as a bigger impulse to the downside. Though until we actually cross 25.39, I am going to be looking out for the potential here that we could still see another push to the downside, but we'd have to move past 1603 to confirm this idea. The probability is already less because we have moved up towards this 0854, and if we do get another push to the upside here, this would look to invalidate this move. Now, if we are looking at this as a corrective move that's incompleted, you know, it is possible still here that we could see another push to the downside, but it would just be in a corrective manner. Now, within this impulse, what I'd be looking for is, like I said, this blue count to play out, and then we'd get an additional 4th wave here and a 5th wave down. Once we get a 5-wave move down like this, we need to be very careful because this could then become A or wave 1, where we get 3 waves up and then continue to the downside. So that's just what we need to be on the lookout for there if we are looking at that bearish scenario. Now, it is also possible that we could see this move to the downside here in a corrective manner, where what we say is that this move is W, X, and Y into this low here. We currently only have 3 waves to the upside here, and what we could then see is a C wave down. Now, that C wave 1-to-1 target would be 1331. We would expect rejection here between this 786, which is this 2828, and this level here of this 50%, which we have already moved up into. So if we do see another push to the upside here, and we move up towards this 0.618 to the 0.65, which would be 25.99 to 25.47. Potentially this could be enough to complete this move to the upside here, and we could still then be looking for an additional leg down for this 1-to-1. What we'd then be looking for within this idea would actually be a C wave, where we would want to see a 5-wave move to the downside. It is technically possible it could develop in 3-wave moves, but looking at the structure here and where it fits in, it would be more likely that it would be a C wave than a Y wave, but we'd have to obviously wait for the confirmation of the count here. So we were talking about this low here, you know, a while back, and saying, you know, we need to just respect the fact that we've hit this 1-to-1 level, and we could look to react to the upside, and we have done this now. So it's going to be key now within these two counts, whether we continue to hold that idea of this being a 4th and we get a 5th, or alternatively this becomes 1-2-1-2. We protect these lows and then look to continue on, but until we do, we just have a 3-wave structure up here, which could look to actually break down for the C wave. Coming in here and having a look at the daily CPR lines, all we can see is that we have printed just slightly higher CPR lines than the previous day here. We have, however, rejected to the downside, found support on this S1, and now retested these central lines. Now, if we start to fail and can't push back above these central lines, which is between this $24 and this $23.73, we could potentially be looking to form another leg to the downside. Other targets for today, if we lose this S1 level, would be this $22.30, 21.42, and this 20.78. Now this would align with the idea that here that we got a bigger corrective structure forming to the downside, where we could still be looking for this idea of a 4th wave, and we can see here that there is some correlation here between some of these points. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on these levels if we do see price starting to fall away. If, however, we start to see price breaking back above these central lines, targets to the upside for today would be 24.51, 25.43, 26.07, and this 26.96. Now these would align with the idea here that we could be looking for this 5th wave. As we can see here, we do have these 2 points here which are aligning with this target area, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on those levels. Now moving over here onto the weekly pivots, what we can see is that we are currently above our central lines. We are also starting to print higher CPR lines. Obviously we need to respect the fact that these are still lower than some of these higher ones over here, but from this low here we do have some higher CPR lines that are playing out. We did have this one which was indicating volatility, and we blasted through these levels. Now we have our central line sitting in this area here of this 23.10 to this 21.61. Now these areas can potentially give us support if we do look to move back down here, as we did over here. If we do move down, we have potential to find support at this 22.37 and this 21.58. This would still align with that idea of something like a 4th wave developing. Alternatively, if we do look to push to the upside this week and we maintain these central lines, what I would be looking for is potentially this 26.03, 28.14, and this 31.79 as potential upside targets for this week. Now if we do look to lose these central lines, targets to the downside would be this 20.22 at this 16.58 and this lower level here of this 14.52. So those are going to be important zones if we do look to actually have a breakdown here. The central lines are going to be very important because these are aligning quite nicely with our idea of a 4th wave here. And even this S1 would align with the idea that this could be 1-2-1-2 if we do look to move down into some of those levels. With the idea of this 5th wave, if we hold this zone, we can once again see that there is some correlation between these CPRs and this 5th wave target. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on those zones. Now, if we move over here onto the monthly pivots, what we can see is that we are currently above our central lines. These are printing lower monthly CPR lines, but we are still higher than this previous one over here. So we could potentially be looking to start to trend up, but we'd need more confirmation. Now, we can see here that we haven't actually had an interaction with these central lines, which is sitting towards this 2077 to this 1956. Now, most commonly, what will happen is if we haven't had an interaction with these, price will be drawn towards these levels, and this would align with the idea of this being 1-2-1-2. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this zone of this 2079 to this 1960 if we do see price looking to break down. However, if we do continue to hold this level of this 22.97 and we do look to rally to the upside, we do still have a target open for this month sitting at this 27.47. Now, sometimes when we get a impulsive move, we can look to blast through these targets, so we need to just be aware of that as well. But if we do look to move down here, we could potentially find support on these central lines. Other targets to the downside for this month is 18.52, 15.70, and this level here of this 14.05, which would align more with the idea here that we could still be looking for some downside, where this is just a bigger B wave and we look for that C wave to the downside still. Okay, so I'm going to leave the video there. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please smash the like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, turn on those bell notifications so you never miss a video. Leave us some feedback down below, and also in the description you will find a link to the Discord. Come check it out, it is free to join. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.